Brought to you by Penguin.
A Traveller at the Gates of Wisdom by John Boyne. Read by Tim Mcinnerny. For my brother, Paul. Author's note. Country names in the chapter titles refer to their current designations in 2020. All other geographical names, cities, towns, villages, are as they were at the time of the story or at their earliest known historical designations. Part 1. A Traveller in the Darkness. Palestine, AD 1. On the night that I was born, my father, Marinus, left our home while my mother was in labour, and over the 8 hours that followed, slaughtered a dozen infant boys, the sons of our neighbours and friends, each one under the age of 2 years. He owned 4 swords, including a pair of gladii and an ornamental seeker that had been handed down through 3 generations of our family, but he chose the smallest weapon in his arsenal, a triangular dagger with a wooden handle and silver blade, known as a parazonium, to end each of the baby's lives. A ruby jewel of considerable value lay at the centre of the quillion, its liquid blush ready to reflect the blood that spilled from the bodies of the children. A man of duty, he did not hesitate as he marched from door to door, searching each house for hidden nurslings, before plunging his knife into the heart of every boy he found. And while mothers screamed in horror and rained curses down upon his head, fathers stood silently in corners, mute and impotent, knowing that if they dared to speak, the blade would surely find its way across their throats before their sentence came to an end. Older siblings trembled in fear as they watched Marinus go about his dark business, soiling themselves, frightened that they too were about to face the judgment of the gods for some unspecified crime. But no, once the babe had been dispatched from this world for the next, my father barely glanced in their direction before making his way to the next house, and the next after that, for there were more babies to discover, and more lives to bring to a premature end. After each murder, he wiped the blade clean on his tunic, the fabric growing increasingly discoloured as the sun began to peep over the horizon in the east, a fiery witness to unspeakable crimes, and soon the grey disappeared beneath an incarnadine coat. Of course, Marinus was not the only man engaged in sanguineous misadventures that night. More than 30 other soldiers had been deployed by King Herod to the towns that surrounded Bethlehem, from Ramat Rachel in the north to Raphidah in the south, and from Har Gilo in the west to Uhazim in the east, until more than 300 infant boys were put to death for the crime of being a potential king of the Jews. When my father returned home in the early morning, his spirit dyed with a barbaric tint that could never be erased. I was suckling at my mother's breast, and he placed a trembling hand upon my skull, resting it there for a moment as he gave me his blessing and begged forgiveness from the immortals atop Mount Olympus. When he took it away, a trace of blood was left in its wake, a deadly deposit, and I've always wondered whether some residue of his crimes remained indelibly upon my soul, a tattoo invisible to all but the eyes of the gods, a reminder of the massacre of the innocents that was taking place as I filled my lungs with air for the first time. There is, of course, an unhappy irony to the fact that he dispatched a dozen babies from this world, for he would be responsible for bringing the same number into it over the course of his life, although few would survive past their infant years. He also saw off 4 wives, although none, I hasten to add, at his own hand. And while my mother, Floriana, was the last woman to marry him, she would not be the last to share either his bed or his home. Marinus's first marriage took place when he was only 12 years old, a forced contract with his cousin Iunia, the ritual taking place in a stone temple in the town of Zat-Tara, where they were both born. The marriage was not a success. His father and uncle greed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?